You're watching Shell Dialogues here on NDTV 24/7. The stakes were already high, and now the stakes have just gotten a little bit higher with the Nobel Peace Prize for President Barack Obama. Why, you ask? Well, because in part he's won the prize for his efforts in meeting the challenges posed by climate change worldwide. The reality, of course, is that the US and the Senate in particular has a long way to go in passing the legislation on curbing emissions, and many believe that the Obama administration officials have not taken bold enough steps in the international dialogues on climate change that have been taking place. The bottom line is we're running out of time. The critical Copenhagen Summit takes place in December. So where do we go from here? And when I say we, I mean India as well, because India plays a pivotal role in climate change talks. The answer lies with my panel. Let me introduce them. Dr. R.K. Pachauri, Chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and Director General of the Energy and Resources Institute. Shyam Saran, Special Envoy of the Prime Minister on Climate Change, and Nitin Desai, Member of the Prime Minister's Special Advisory Council on Climate Change and a former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of this critical discussion. First off, let's take stock of Bangkok and where we stand post-Bangkok. Mr. Saran.
Difficult to say where we stand because our sense is that, in fact, even instead of moving forward, we seem to have moved a bit backwards at Bangkok. And that does not really augur very well for the success of Copenhagen. We still have one more meeting to be held in Barcelona next month, and that would really be the last occasion on which we can perhaps get all the various pieces together. But essentially what happened at Bangkok was that the mandate with which we were negotiating, which is known as the Bali Action Plan, that particular mandate to us is sacrosanct. But what we found was that during the course of the meeting in Bangkok, an effort was made to put aside one very important link in these negotiations, that is the Kyoto Protocol. A demand by the developed countries that the Kyoto Protocol should be set aside, that we should really be aiming for a new instrument which would incorporate the obligations not only of the developed countries but also of the developing countries. And there were other moves which seem to indicate that the level of obligation which is enshrined in the Kyoto Protocol and the compliance procedure which is also incorporated in the Kyoto Protocol would also be set aside.
So I'm getting a sense from you that, there's actually much less consensus post-Bangkok. And Mr. Desai, would you kind of endorse that?
Well, I would actually argue that the jettisoning of the Kyoto Protocol was almost implicit in what was agreed in Bali. Because it really, it was, many people had also anticipated at that time that how are they going to get these two parts to fit together. One thing called a long-term cooperation agreement and another thing called the Kyoto Protocol. So this is not a surprise that this demand has come. I think the bottom line is what is it that the countries will commit themselves to doing in Copenhagen? Will we preserve the distinction between the developed countries and the developing countries in the nature of the commitments?
Tubar.com,